Just a few years ago, if you told me I would be obsessed with the brand Grand Seiko, I would have called you crazy. After all, it does have Seiko on the dial. But throughout the years, I've experienced so many Grand Seikos, and their watches are pretty much perfect. Especially for their watches under $10,000, you can't get any better than Grand Seiko. That is why a lot of influencers are saying Grand Seiko will dethrone Rolex. Will that happen? Who knows? But all I know is, for those who know Grand Seiko, well, for those who collect Grand Seikos, they're in a pretty good place. Now, if you watch my previous videos on Grand Seiko, you'll see that I had a lot of reservations when it comes to their sports watches. Their sports watches are on par with the quality of every other watch. My reservations, however, came from the size. While I personally do not mind 44mm dive watches, some people with smaller wrists just can't sport it. For the longest time, Grand Seiko refused to give us a watch that has a smaller case, which is why they couldn't really compete with the likes of Rolex. Now you already know, I'm about to give you some good news. 40.5mm. Now finally, those with smaller wrists can enjoy Grand Seiko sports watches. While Grand Seiko has always had watches 40 and under, they've never had a sports watch. Not until this. Not to mention, this is a GMT and a spring drive. Pretty much the best of everything Grand Seiko produces. Now, many will mention that there has been technically a smaller sports watch, but it only had D9F quartz. Collectors were asking for high beat, automatic, or spring drive, which is what we get here. So what is different between this and the older models, especially the bigger ones? Well, pretty much just the size. Many have mentioned this is a 40.5, but after sizing it myself, I'm getting exactly 40. The crown being at 4 o'clock makes this wear even better, and the crown doesn't dig into your wrist, but I got a true 40, 47mm lug to lug, and 13mm thickness. Overall, a very comfortable proportion, and one of the most comfortable sports watches coming out of Grand Seiko. As I slap this on my wrist, it is very comfortable. That deep blue color is absolutely stunning. One thing I would recommend for Grand Seiko to do is to utilize this exact same case and make a pure dive watch. After wearing this for a while, I wanted just simplicity, something that could possibly compete with the Tudor Black Bay 58. I feel like Grand Seiko has the opportunity to do this, and I feel like they will. But overall, on the wrist, this watch is very, very comfortable. Speaking of simplicity, let me give you my first negative, and that is the date window over at the 4 o'clock position. It is so unnecessary, and I feel like it keeps the dial very cluttered. Although I do not like a date, it is not executed in the best way. I would have preferred it either at 3 or not there at all. Especially that this is a GMT, not to mention that power reserve on the other side. Everything is just starting to look too busy. So hopefully Grand Seiko creates a no-date dive watch that would compete with the Black Bay 58. The operation of this watch is relatively simple. You pull the crown out at the first position and the hour hand jumps, pull it out to the second position, and you could set your time. Having this way as a GMT watch, for me, is one of the best ways other than having a world timer. It is so easy to just pull out the crown and fix your time zone as soon as you land anywhere, and that is why I love this caliber. Speaking of caliber, those with a keen eye would have noticed that extremely smooth seconds hand. That is because this watch is powered by the 9R66 spring drive caliber. 72 hours of power reserve with an accuracy of around plus or minus 1 second per day and 15 seconds per month. This is why Grand Seiko is so loved by collectors and why the spring drive is an innovation that people respect even if you don't like quartz. Needless to say, I am a big fan of this new size sports watch. The Grand Seiko finishing is there, Zaratsu polishing. Everything you expect from Grand Seiko, you get with this watch. The only thing that is new is that size. That is why I'm very excited for 2021, because this only means that Grand Seiko has a lot in store for guys with smaller wrists.